Hello, Chris and Sharon. Can you hear me?
I had it on mute because I wasn't sure if I was just supposed to be listening. Hi.
Hi. No, mute is usually very good. We were just having the 4 o'clock Eastern time move out and Central time move in. And so
Okay.
I think all the Eastern Seaboard folks have left, except myself, of course. So welcome. We had a couple folks from Milwaukee who were going to join us, but there's a snowstorm. And
Oh,
ice is expected, and I'm originally from the Midwest, and we don't do well with ice typically. So
yeah.
they have gone home, and so that's good. So it's going to be a smaller group today, but I think we'll have a really good conversation.
Okay.
So without further ado, I'd like to get started, and if more folks join us, then more folks join us.
Cool.
Sound good? Sound good. Excuse me, I've been talking for an hour, and
Yes.
and we have had a bunch of snow and ice here in New England, and so my kids are home, but they've been threatened with an inch of their life to stay out, and also it's possible if they stay out. So this is not my office. I am at home, and I put up a screen to cover up my non-Marie Kondo living. So
Got it.
so thank you for adjusting
Smart.
today. It was too treacherous to get into Boston. So welcome.
We're at home in Omaha too.
Okay. Yeah. Oh, then you understand. Thank you then.
Nice.
For being with us. So let's go through the agenda, and then we'll have a chance to introduce ourselves a bit. So our agenda for today, we're going to do a quick opening prayer. We'll do roll call, which will be quick and easy. We're going to go over some information. And then I have a video. So Christina Ludis, who is the mentor in Phoenix, could only come to one of the webinar because I've got one at like every hour for the next 4 hours, and she can only come to one. So she's recorded herself going over some information, and she's done a beautiful job. So we'll go through the video together. And she is available by email or phone. If you should have follow-up questions, she's happy to answer them. And then we'll have some time for a chat, and then just some housekeeping stuff. So if you are dealing with snow like I am, it sounds like everybody is more or less, and a long weekend and a short week to get a lot done, I'm sure it's a little bit hectic. Mine is a little bit hectic. And on top of it, the Patriots are in the Super Bowl again, and New England is so obnoxious. It's unbelievable. I'll be glad when it's all done. But let's take a moment to kind of center ourselves. And I want to share this prayer with you. It's a prayer for teachers. I'm a former elementary school teacher, as you guys know. So in the name of the Father, Son, and Holy Spirit. O Christ the teacher, you are the way, the truth, and the life. Help me not only to strive to be a good teacher, but to be one. Not only to talk about you, but to make you present in my classroom. Not only to encourage faith, hope, and love, but to embody those virtues in my students. Inspire my planning, preparation, and teaching today, and open the hearts and minds of my students to respond generously to your invitation to know, love, and serve you. In the name of the Father, Son, and Holy Spirit. Amen. Trying to live our ideals today, and we're talking about some important stuff, the core of everything we do. So why don't we take a moment to kind of introduce ourselves? We got 2 folks from Omaha and a friend from Denver. So I'll start my video again. And we also have, a friend from Wisconsin after all. I heard you had snow, Mr. Maslowski.
Yes, we did.
Do you want to go first? Would you like to introduce yourself?
Sure. Hi, I'm Corey Maslowski. I'm the mentor for Risen Christ in Minneapolis.
Oh, Minneapolis. Well, you're originally from
I grew up in Wisconsin. It's all good.
Sorry, I associate with you, but it moved through. You're done with it now. They can take it over in Green Bay. Okay, very good. So we've got Minnesota, and then Omaha. Amanda, would you like to go next?
Hi, I'm Amanda Alvarado. I am the assistant principal at the Dual Language Academy in Omaha.
I'm glad you're here. Thank you, Amanda. And your colleague, Chris?
Afternoon, everybody. I'm Chris Nelson. I'm the executive director for the Omaha Catholic School Consortium, and we're in our first year of implementation for the Dual Language Academy.
a big undertaking, but you guys are doing great. It sounds like
It's exciting stuff. Yep.
Very good. And then Sharon.
Hi, I'm Sharon, and I am the literacy coach here in Denver at Escuela de Guadalupe.
Very good. So Escuela, I think, it's definitely the oldest in Colorado, but probably one of the oldest, if not the oldest in the United States in the modern era of bilingual Catholic education. Is that right?
I believe so. Yeah, we went to the first Twin CS summer things.
You did. I was there for that. It was interesting. We were making it up as we go, as we went along. But it was great over at the Wiley Center on the Ocean, and we all learned a lot. And your school made a presentation or two.
Yes.
And we learned a lot from each other. So I'm glad you're here. I think we're going to continue to learn a lot, and I hope we'll have some really rich conversation too. So now, to me, as a former school teacher and as someone who's talking to the schools all the time, the most important thing we can do is thinking about the scope and sequence of what we're trying to achieve. That it is easy to think, okay, I've got to get this test done in the spring and then I mark off my checkbox. None of the twin schools are that unkind to the students. They're not just testing for the sake of testing. However, it is good to think about what we're trying to do. I encourage you, now these slides are going to be made available very shortly on the Twin website, and you'll be able to link directly to the Guiding Principles 3rd edition. If you do not have a copy for yourself, either in hard copy or electronic PDF, please get a copy. We used it at the Academy. It is something that every twin teacher, twin principal, twin assistant principal, dual language coordinator, everybody should have a copy of this. It is the backbone of what we're trying to do. It's from Cal. I've talked actually to the executive director of Cal. He was thrilled that we're using it, and he hopes to have future partnerships with us. But the PDF version is just as good. I like the hard copy myself, but I know it's an expense. But the 3rd edition is really quite good. So that just came out recently. It's about 1.5 years old, if that, and it's something you should have. So are you making time to meet across your school? So are you meeting by grade? Are the grades coming down to visit the other grades? Are you meeting by team? Do you have teams that comprise all different types of teachers, not just say this 4th grade team or that 5th grade team? Are you meeting across? Are all the teachers who teach Spanish meeting together, regardless of what grade they're teaching? This kind of stuff is going to be very, very helpful. I'll give you an example. In Orlando, the twin school in Orlando, this is their first full year. They've been trying bits and pieces of it, similar to kind of what Omaha's doing, but this is their first full implementation. And so they've got just the little ones. They're going to be expanding into kindergarten, but they've already had the 2nd grade teacher, or excuse me, the 1st grade teachers, and they will in a month have the 2nd grade teachers come and sit with the little kids, because they're going to be their future students. They need to be thinking about, am I going to be on par with where my colleagues are so I can pick up where they left off and not rehash something so the kids lose a month? Or am I going to be too far ahead? So this is meant to be an ongoing conversation in Orlando, that they're going to have to keep doing these kinds of conversations to make sure that they're not too far ahead and not too far behind, to really be in step together. Because this testing will mean nothing if we're not coordinating our instruction and aligning so that the goals and benchmarks for the assessments, whatever assessments we choose to use, are being met because we have really had really good conversation and communication with each other about where we are in the curriculum, what we're trying to achieve, and how we're going to achieve it, so that those kids leave the school fully bilingual and biliterate. There's a very good, again, this set of slides we made available to you on the Twin website. There's an example that the Department of Education actually put together about a school district. I think they may have changed the name to protect the teachers' identities, but really it's really good stuff. So they had in this, I think it's 4 pages maybe, PDF, they had the teachers, it's like a case study, come together, and they had upper elementary with lower elementary. And they gave the same set of questions. What are our goals? Have we met them? How have we met them? To both sets of teachers. What came out of it was that the older grade teachers were saying, you're sending us students that aren't ready for our stuff. We have to review, we have to do so much remedial stuff to get them where we want them to be, that you need to change the way you're doing things. Lower elementary, and of course I'm summarizing, but the lower elementary said we weren't aware. Now we know, so now we can address this directly in our instructions so that by the time our second graders reach you in 4th or 5th grade, they'll be prepared. I've had conversations with twin schools where they're getting these students at like 4th, 5th, 6th grade and they aren't where they need to be in their Spanish. Others are way more ahead than they thought they'd be. So it's off a little bit sometimes, and so we need to have good communication across the grade levels so that it's reflective in the assessments and also in what the children can do in listening, reading, speaking, and writing. So I'd say, take a look at this example when you get the slides. You can take a look at their PDF. I think it's quite useful. And if nothing else, it's a great thought project, to take to a faculty meeting and have them read ahead of time and say, okay, what do you think? Are you experiencing this? Do you feel comfortable talking to, if you're a 5th grade teacher, talking to a 1st grade teacher, or 1st grade talking to, say, 4th grade? Is there a good flow of communication to make sure everyone is working together for the same ultimate goal of having proficient, strong, independent-minded, nice kids who are ready for all kinds of academic challenges? So part of this comes for our goals. Now, there's a really great webinar from a year ago that was done by Dr. Bridget Yaden from Tacoma, Washington. She's at Pacific Lutheran University. You have access to this through the Twin website. It's a really good webinar. She goes through how they approached it at the school she was mentoring. So they took these big national suggestions about proficiency and they adjusted them based on grade level, made like a grid of what she thought the school could achieve. It's a really good example of how this can work in terms of scope and sequence. So I would suggest looking at this with a couple of colleagues, pausing it when she shows you the grid and say, okay, is that what we want to? Do we want our 1st graders to be, say, novice at speaking and maybe novice to mid at writing? And if we want that, have we communicated that to the teachers? Is this achievable, or is it too high or too low? So this is something that you need to decide for your own group of students. It's a great webinar. And we really do need to think about these 4 levels. And I know you all are, but here it is January. So by June, what do we want to achieve? We're about halfway. Catholic Schools Week is upon us, it's nipping at our heels. So what do we want to achieve? And then as you're thinking about enrollments or new families coming in, or re-enrolling, whatever the case may be, are we able to articulate to them that their children will be able to listen, read, speak, and write at certain levels in both Spanish and English, or English and Mandarin, whatever the case may be? I know in all of these schools that we are representing today it's Spanish, but are we able to articulate that, both teachers and school leaders? Because ultimately, proficiency is the goal. Utah has done a really nice job with this, and this is a bit small. Again, when you get the slides, you'll be able to enlarge this. But they have this, I've just taken a screenshot of their French, German, Portuguese, and Spanish levels, but they also have this for many languages. And I think this is something to think about. And this is what Bridget was advocating in that webinar from last January. Thinking about grade level, thinking about the 4 domains, and thinking using ACTFL levels, which we'll talk about in a minute. Are the children progressing in a developmentally appropriate, steady way that is not watered down nor too fast, that they are really, whether they're heritage speakers or not, really going to allow them to become proficient by the time they leave the program. So even if you're working with 3-year-olds or 4-year-olds or kindergartners, the goal is that by the time, say, they're in 5th grade, they should be maybe intermediate to mid. But that's something as a school community you'll have to decide. But this is a really good tool to think about. If you were to complete a grid with the 4 domains and grade and these ACTFL levels, where would your children fall and where would you like them to fall? This might be something to work on at the Summer Academy. This might be something to work on, say, if you have a professional development day coming up. Where do we think they actually are? Do we have the data to back it up? Are they going to be able to meet what we want them to meet? We at the Roche Center are here to support you in that, but this is something to consider. And I've done a lot of talking at you. Do you have any questions so far or thoughts? And if not, that's okay. I want to give you the opportunity. My wait time has improved since I taught 3rd grade. I think it's because I didn't actually want the 3rd graders to talk, but they're now in college, so I guess they have something to say now. They're all good kids, and they still like me. They tell me what they're doing. But when I think back to my own 3rd graders, I know for me, I was thinking about the next 2 months. I wasn't thinking about when they're off in college. I was thinking, okay, so here's what I want them to do. Here's what we have to do by such and such date. Here's when we have to take this test. Here's when we have to set aside time for such and such. It's hard to think long term, especially when you have a short planning period. I had a very short planning period every day and took everything home with me. It's very hard. But as a team or as a community, we can help each other think long term and then what we need to do in the short term to meet those goals. So to do this, thinking about goals, we need to ask ourselves some big questions. So for the students to reach the levels we want them to reach, to really become proficient at the pace we want them to become proficient at, what do we need to assess? In what ways does it need to be tested? Do we need to test everything every year? This is a conversation that has economic implications as well as just social and emotional. We don't want to burn the kids out. These 4 domains will have to be included somehow when it becomes appropriate. So when they are a little bit older, so I know Amanda's working with little ones, probably not writing anything useful, but lots of good work happening. Lots of pre-writing, lots of fine motor skills being developed, lots of good listening skills being developed, and they're getting the muscles in their tongue ready so they can switch from English to Spanish and back and forth. So lots of important things. The foundation is being laid in Amanda's school. But you're going to be handing them off to Andrew and Megan before we know it. And so we need to think about, will they be ready for these 4 domains? In Denver, you have a larger school, and I would say this is just like a rhetorical question. Feel no obligation to represent the entire Guadalupe community. But is there a sense of what the students who leave the school can do, and are we continuing to progress? It's a big question. Hopefully so. I imagine so. But in these 4 domains, how are we doing? And for Corey, you've got your school that you run as the principal, but then also Risen Christ, and thinking about those 2 groups of students in terms of these 4 domains. So you've got 2 hats really that you wear, and it's great to be able to bring both perspectives to both learning communities, I think. So just to get our conversation going, what types of assessments are you using or are you thinking about using? What has worked well, what hasn't? And I am not beholden to any testing company, so you can say whatever you'd like. Sharon, did you want to say something? Nope, back to mute, that's fine.
Oh, I'm trying, sorry.
Uh-huh.
Let's see, we use MAP testing and DRA testing.
Mm-hmm. For English and Spanish, or?
MAP is only in English. DRA is in both, kinder through 7th grade. And then we have a couple of Spanish assessments, LOS and Aprenda.
Okay, okay.
And there's probably some other things in there. We also do Solemn and some other things for beyond just reading and writing.
So quite a variety of stuff.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, yeah. Very good, thank you for sharing. I know that in Omaha you're thinking about that because you are so new to the whole program, but I know you've been giving lots of thought to that. Is there anything you've thought about thus far, or are you still in the just thinking about it stage?
Well, we use STAR testing, and that's available to us in both reading and Spanish. So that's a K-8 model, so it doesn't go down quite as young as we'd like. The Fontes and Pinnell benchmarking system, we have that available to us in Spanish as well, English and Spanish. But we're really still in that kind of research and pondering stage on what language assessment particular that we might be interested in. Amanda, anything I forgot and left off?
The teachers have been doing a lot of their own assessments in the classrooms. They have, especially preschool and pre-K, have created their own kind of like report card, but actually measures each kind of skill both in English and Spanish, including like recognizing shapes and letter sounds and recognizing the letters. And I know kindergarten has done the loss testing, but there, as far as like a formal assessment of some sort, there isn't any that we are really using right now.
No, I think you guys you have a lot that you're working on and a lot that you've accomplished in a very short period of time. So I think that's fantastic. And Corey, would you like to share anything about either the school you are a principal of or anything with Risen Christ you'd like to share?
Yeah, I can start with the school where I'm principal. So we've used a variety of assessments similar to other people over the years. We're currently, for English, doing MAP testing 3 times a year for both reading and math. We do FAST testing, which is a fluency testing, and that's in both English and Spanish. There's a strong correlation, as we know, between words read per minute and comprehension. So that's our initial dipstick, and then we'll go deeper with students after that based on what that data tells us. But that's like going and checking your oil, right? And so we do, with kids who are below grade level, then we do that weekly just to kind of see how they're progressing. We've done SOPA COPE, which came from the Center for Applied Linguistics, which was good information, extremely time intensive. And so we haven't done the battery like what Bridget had done. I'm blanking on the name of the assessment that she's using.
The STAMP test?
STAMP, yep. We used to do that in 5th grade and then again in 8th grade as they're getting ready to go on to high school. But at the time that we did it, it wasn't quite as fleshed out as what I think it is today. So we actually have it on our list this year to try it again in 4th grade, in particular for the speaking in Spanish.
Great. And you raised some interesting points I just want to touch on, Corey. Thank you. The idea of a dipstick came up in the East Coast webinar as well. And it's really, to me, how it should be. That this is not supposed to be determinative, but rather just to make sure the children are making progress. And we think about the cost of the test in terms of how much money you have to spend per test per child, but also the time matters too. And that is something that I'm glad you mentioned, Corey, because some of these can be so labor intensive, especially if it's a one-on-one with one adult with one child. I mean, that could take up all your time. I used to do running records with my students, but it was a very small parochial school. And so I could do that, but it's tricky. It's tricky in terms of your structure of your school day to make sure you've got the time and space to do that. And there's a cost to that. And I think we do need to think about as a cost. But that being said, if it's a computer-based test, there are costs for that too. So I'm speaking to you today from Central Massachusetts, which is semi-rural, and we don't always have reliable internet. Thankfully, the storm has passed and my internet's working well today. But the school that my children go to had to ramp up all their systems and buy all kinds of equipment because the state mandated a computer-based test. And there's a cost to that too. So and training, the teachers all had to be trained. And so there's a lot to it that we need to think about, a lot of parameters. And I think you've raised some good ones. We used to use a lot of Woodcock Munoz in the Twin Network. Fantastic test, very well received, very time intensive. Very time intensive to manage it and to proctor it, and then also on our end to process it. So, and that has evolved. They're now developing a computer base, but that's something to consider with any of these. So I recommend, this is just me speaking as a former educator or classroom educator, but take an audit of what your school is using and to really kind of map it out. The children have this many tests by January of their grade year. They have this many by the time they're in 4th grade. So to really get a sense of both formative and summative, is there state mandated tests that your students have to take? In Arizona, there is. And in addition to everything we are talking about today, in Arizona, they have their own type of tests for those who are recognized as ELL by law. So how much testing is happening? So I think taking an audit can be really helpful and thinking about the costs, time and treasure involved. So in the previous call, we had several more principles, so I don't want to put you on the spot here, but if you'd like to, are you thinking about the price point and how to budget that in? I'd argue to separate that from curriculum. I think that's better for accounting and budgeting purposes, that the test itself should not be part of your curriculum budget. That should be its own separate thing. And there are funds, some title funds that could possibly be used to cover those. Or there are partnerships with local education agencies to help proctor the test. That was something that was used quite a bit in Texas twin schools because they were short-staffed. And so instead of hiring someone to help proctor the test, the LEA has someone who can come out and help do that. So there are ways to offset the cost, but that's something to think about. Chris, Amanda, Corey, is there anything you'd like to think or share about that? And if not, that's okay. Something to think about. Chris?
Right. I was just going to say, we're still really in the infancy, so it's hard to, I appreciate the points about separating the line items on the budget, and we'll definitely take that into consideration as we move forward.
Yeah, I hope it's helpful, and it may not be, but I would also look into what partnerships might be available through the local LEA. That was helpful to a couple of our colleagues in San Antonio because someone could come because they didn't have the staff, and it was easier than hiring someone. And then we've kind of discussed this already, but what are you using currently? And are they effective? And we've kind of talked about that a bit. Sharon, you shared quite a thorough list of all the different tests. And it sounds like a lot, but I bet the kids are used to it too. They're used to the rhythm of testing, maybe.
Yes. Somewhat. I find that it is a lot. You don't realize it, but when you have a new student here and there, it's really clear that they're not used to it. It takes like until the second map test before they're accustomed, kind of a thing.
Point.
What did you want me to answer? How they're effective?
Yeah. Do you think are they capturing your students? Like I had to administer a test. First of all, we didn't get the results till July, so that did us a fat lot of good. And then also, I don't think it was representative of what our students could do. So what do you think? What is your thoughts on that?
I find that happens a lot. In general, as an adult, I know many adults that when I tell them I work in education, that's, one thing that often comes up, that people aren't good test takers. Other things interfere with really valid assessment data, if they didn't sleep enough, overslept, all these little variables can affect it. So it's hard I never take an assessment data point and say like that 100% shows exactly what the student knew on that day.
Yeah, I think that's wise. And then also, it's not necessarily reflective of you as a teacher, because this might be beyond your control. You can't make the kids sleep more or eat a better breakfast. So, but I think the idea of a dipstick is a really good image. This is just supposed to be a quick check.
Yes. This year we have tried to, well, maybe more than this year, but we've tried to do more with like sending home letters, letting parents know when testing is going to happen, and also providing something small for like a breakfast, a juice and a granola bar or something like that.
Right. So I think communicating with the parents is a really important, you probably send the English and Spanish.
Yes.
Yeah. And thinking about how you can be a partner with the parents, having a little bit extra breakfast available, I think that's wonderful and probably helps a great deal.
Yeah.
Because, as we'll see here, there are so many tests, and the kids could be exposed to the WIDA and the STAR 360 as in Omaha, and the MAP suite, which is available in Spanish and Arabic as well as English, and the Easy CBM, which is available online but only till 2nd grade, and then the Avant Stamp. These are just a few. And hopefully you're not using all of these at the same time because it's a lot financially and also just your time. But there's a lot, it's a whole business. And we need them because we can't reinvent the wheel every time, but it's a lot to choose from. It's a lot to manage, a lot of different interfaces the kids have to get used to so they can do well. So, and then of course you've mentioned a few others are not even on here. So with this in mind, I'd like to show you the video that Christina put together. It's about 9 minutes. It's really well done. She did a really nice job. So do bear with me for just a quick second. And are there any questions before I show you the video? Okay. Then I'm going to switch over and hopefully this will work. It worked last time, so hopefully it continues to work. It is available, so it will be available to you later if you want to show it to your colleagues. Let's see. Okay.
Hi, my name is Christina Lattis. I work as a mentor
Can you see it?
for one of the twin schools,
No.
St.
Okay,
Matthew in
thank you.
Phoenix.
All right, that's what I
Good
need
to
to
see
know.
you all. Hope everybody.
Okay, we will fix that. Thank you. I can't tell what you can see all the time. So let's try this again. Thank you for your patience. One moment. And it's after 5
Hi,
o'clock.
my name is Christina
Here,
Lattis.
let's see
I
here.
work as a mentor
Still nothing.
for one of the twin schools,
Okay, good.
St.
Thank
Matthew
you.
in Phoenix. Good to see you all. Hope
One moment.
everybody is doing well. I have a few minutes to give you
Can
an
you see it now?
overview on one of the assessments
can't, okay.
that we're using to measure language
All we
proficiency
can see is the PowerPoint. So it's like you have to minimize the PowerPoint screen
levels,
if
which
you can.
Mhm.
found in this pyramid over here. If you're interested in learning more about
Can you
those,
see anything now?
there is
No, it's weirdly stuck.
languages
Okay,
that
thank
have
you.
different proficiency levels.
I
And
apologize.
you can learn
We'll
about
start
it
over.
from this website.
I don't have my
ACTFL,
colleagues back at
and
the
that
office because
stands
it's
for the
after 5
American
o'clock now.
Council.
Hold on one moment. Thank you for your patience. Okay, so I can see your smiling faces. That's good, that's helping. Thank you.
And we see you, just full screen you.
I'm trying to stop that part. One moment. Okay. So, but this feedback is very helpful, Chris, so thank you. So
Sure.
what I'm going to do is we're going to do that. Can you see YouTube now?
Yes.
Ooh, okay. So now I'll go over here. Can you hear anything?
Hi, my name is Christina.
Yes.
I work as a mentor
I earned my
for
pay
one
today.
of the twin
Okay,
schools,
here we go.
St. Matthew in Phoenix. Good to see you all. Hope everybody is doing well.
Perfect.
Have a few minutes to give you an overview.
The sound went out.
There are all these different languages that have different proficiency levels, and you can learn about it from this website, ACTFL, and that stands for the American Council on the Teaching of Foreign Languages. They also have it in English for ESL students that are English learners. So if we go to the main page, we can go to the assessment tab and scroll down to where it says Apple, all modes, performance assessments, and Apple stands for ACTFL's assessment of performance towards proficiency in languages, because a lot of us are asking the question, are our students learning the other language? What can they do? How do we measure it? And this is something that will give you some definite feedback in that department. So the nice thing about how this is set up that I want to share with you is you can pretty much go through this on your own and teach yourself how to do this, how to administer this assessment and what it all entails. So you're going to go to assessments, you're going to click here, then you're going to just start by looking at this website here. It'll tell you the 3 modes of communication that are assessed. You have interpersonal listening and speaking, presentational writing, and interpretive reading and listening. This first one is $10 a student because it's actually scored. The student will need headphones and a microphone to do this one. The test is available on iPad, Chromebooks, or regular computers. And there's a whole information in the FAQ section on technology specs that you can check out with your IT people. The presentational writing only needs headphones, as does the interpretive reading and listening. Presentational writing is $5 a student. Interpretive reading and listening come bundled together, and those are $5 a test for both. So $5 for both of those tests. One way of doing this is to benchmark the test so that you're not giving everything every single year. Maybe set it up so that we at St. Matthews are going to start with interpersonal listening and speaking with the third graders. And then we'll benchmark that every 2 years. And also with the others we're talking about benchmarking them every 2 years. So with that, if you keep going here, you'll see it says About Apple. You click there and you can watch some videos about it. That'll give you some background information. You can go to tasks and topics, click on Apple content topics for 2019, and you can actually get an idea of what the test is going to be using for its topics this year. This is, if you read across this way, this is for novice levels, beginning levels in the interpersonal listening and speaking test, presentational writing test, interpretive listening and interpretive reading test. And then you also have additional topics for those students that are going to move into the intermediate levels. And if you have heritage speakers, then they will be moved into daily life, all of these advanced level topics. So with that, if you scroll down here, I just want to point out one thing. Depending on where your proficiency level of your students are, wherever you think they are, and again, you can read about all of these proficiency levels on that first website that I showed you. There's videos that give examples, and you can really learn it on your own. So Form A1 is for novice to intermediate students, and Form B1 is for intermediate to advanced level students. And this is for the any students that are grades 8 and under, which I think is most of our network. So if we go back here, we have scores. I just want to show you what a score report looks like. There's a little link right here to show you. Once your students have taken the test, the first two, interpersonal listening and speaking and the presentational writing, take about 2 weeks to get back to you because they're actually scored by a person. The reading and the listening are scored automatically, so by the next day you should be able to log into the testing portal and see how they did. This is what you will be able to download, and it's a very nice, I usually duplex it and I share it with parents at parent-teacher conferences. So here's the explanation of how the ACTFL performance scale ties in with the proficiency guidelines and also the Apple measure scores. Oh, that's right, you can't see it. Oh no, yes you can, okay. So if you scroll down, you'll see this is actually the student report. And so this student has reached an I1, which is intermediate low, and it tells the student what they can do with the language for this particular test, interpersonal listening and speaking. And then the nice thing is it gives them a strategy on what they need to do to get to the next level. So this test is all about what you can do in the moment and what you need to do to get to the next level, which is kind of all that grit and determination, growth mindset everybody's talking about. So here's the interpretive reading, interpretive listening, interpretive and presentational writing. And each test starts at the bottom and fills in according to how the student is doing with their performance towards their proficiency levels. So with that, I'm going to skip to tips and click on tips here, because tips page gives you some exactly that, how to do your best on each of the different tests, on the 3 different modes of communication that are covered. So definitely watch those, and then we even show them to the students. I wanted to just jump you really quickly into the demo, because this is another way to really get a good idea of what's happening. And the demo takes you to the company that actually administers the test is called Language Testing International. So Actful had a lot of input into developing the test, and Language Testing International delivers the test. So you would go to here, sign in. You would sign in as an organization and set up a whole account for yourself. I already have an account set up, so I'm just going to click in here and just give you a peek at the portal. And trying to see how much time I have left. And with that, you've got a whole left navigation on this side that will take you through everything from requesting a test to printing the certificates to viewing your invoice to being able to listen to your students' interpersonal listening and speaking test that they took in here. It's recorded and saved for, I think, about 6 to 8 months, as well as the writing sample is posted there. So that's a nice piece for teachers to be able to go back in there and listen. And then there's also reporting tabs that help you come up with charts and graphs. And I am probably out of time here, so I'm just going to let you again see this website, because you can get to everything from the Actful American Council on the Teaching of Foreign Languages website. And with that, I hope that this gives you at least one tool that you can look into. There's another assessment out there called the STAMP test, and it's very similar concept. We just happen to use the Actful, and that's the one I'm familiar with, and I wanted to share that one with you guys. So hopefully that's helpful, and should you have any questions, I'm happy for people to reach out to me. I'm at clattis@ccusd93.org. All right, thank you very much.
All right, so I think this is a useful way of thinking about it. Let's see if I can get us back up. There we go. Thank you. Any questions? Any thoughts about what was presented? Christina is available. Go ahead. Go ahead. So Christina is available if you want to contact her. I'm happy to connect you. And let's make sure I can make this work. Okay. Any thoughts about what she presented?
What I like about the Apple test, and actually Christina and I have talked about it quite a bit over the past couple of years, but what I like about this and the stamp is it's something tangible. And once again, it's a one-time off. And so I know, I think Sharon spoke to it earlier. I mean, when the day is done, you know, an assessment's an assessment. And so we never want to make any decisions based on a child's education unless you have 2, 3, 4 data points. Typically for us, it's 3 data points. And that could be, you know, internally, but also some of these larger assessments. So I'm excited to explore this more and hopefully share my data this summer.
That would be great. That would be wonderful, actually. And somebody in the previous webinar asked, you know, what if we all took the same test and across the network and we see how everyone's doing? And I said, empirically, I get that. Socially, not going to happen. We're too small, and it's too risky to compare Saint so-and-so against Saint so-and-so. But I get the motivation behind that. And if we can just in generality share how we're doing and maybe compare our kids to a national, that would be something, and we can talk about that. But again, like you're saying, this is just one data point, and they're all looking at listening, reading, speaking. So they should be somewhat similar. So we can talk about these things, especially at the Academy. That'd be a great place to compare notes and ideas. Other thoughts or questions? So Christina Lattis' last name is spelled L-A-D-A-S. So C. Lattis, and she really is more than willing to take questions. She took quite a few at the last webinar. There was a lot of interest in what tools folks are using for their summative assessments versus their formative. There are some who have been using a few different tools, but they'd like something else. So we'll try to collect that information. We always try to do that every year, but it's a little bit of a moving target, but we'll try. That is something going forward for our friends in Omaha to be thinking about, you know, your summative assessment versus formative assessment, and how many data points you have per student to make sure it's really consistent going forward. Other questions or thoughts? Okay. So we've covered quite a bit here, and this is a topic that we're going to keep talking about because it's so essential to everything we're doing, to really make sure that we are preparing students to be biliterate and bilingual by the time they're done with your programs. Assessment's an important part of that. At the Roche Center, we're not going to endorse anything, but we can help. And Dr. Rosa Reynoso, my colleague, is happy to answer questions about assessment as you think of them. And then I'm always glad to connect people who, you know, if I get a call from a principal saying, I'm thinking about using such and such test, does anybody else use it? I will connect you. I've connected groups of first grade teachers with other first grade teachers across the country so they can have like almost like a private chat about what's working, what's not, so that you can really grow as professionals, but also strengthen your programs. So feel free to reach out. I'm happy to do so. I also tried to connect mentors with other mentors. So we've got two relatively new, one brand new mentor in Omaha, and I've been farming them out for conversation to all different kinds of people. They're very knowledgeable in their own realms. And actually, Amanda, one of them, I guess, is your former professor. She's lovely. Dr. Hearn. So they know what they're doing, but this is a different beast, the twins. So it's great to connect with other mentors, other advisors to get ideas. So feel free to ask. I'm happy to connect. And I know everyone would be happy to talk to everybody else. So it's a great network that way. The dual language coordinator in Baltimore has been doing a lot with his local Spanish consulate to get materials. The consulates do provide materials. I know in Omaha you have connected through Betty to your Mexican consulate, but that's another tool that is not maybe a formal assessment, but to get a sense of if these students were going to school in Spain or Mexico, would they be on par with their age level peers? And also it's fun to see new approaches to teaching. So ask and you shall receive. Happy to help in any way. Let's go over some housekeeping while we have a few more minutes. I want to keep on time here, maybe even a couple minutes early. But if you have not registered, please do. I think everyone here has. I'd have to think about it. But if you register, then we are collecting your information so that we can give you a certificate with your professional development hours. So you can send that to whomever. So Amanda can give that to Chris, possibly. I don't know if that's how that would work. But we want to keep track of it and be accurate. So if you haven't registered, it's hard for us to keep track. So make sure you do that. Right? Yes. Okay. Feedback form. There is a feedback form. I'm going to email it to you all because I'm having trouble with the link right now. But if you wouldn't mind giving me feedback so I can keep trying to improve and provide you with the information you need. Thank you all for helping me get that YouTube video going. It's hard for me to know what you can see and hear with Zoom. Zoom is a great tool, but then there's a limit to it. But so thank you very much for letting me know what was working. But I'll send you that feedback form by email. And if you would take 2 minutes to fill it out, I'd be very appreciative. You should have received information about the Academy. So principals and mentors, you should have received a registration form, kind of like save the date for the Summer Academy, June 23rd through 27th here in Boston. Please provide Fabiola, my colleague Fabiola, with all the information you can at this point so that she has a sense of how many to expect. If you aren't sure who might be coming from your school, make your best guess or say so to Fabiola, let her know so that she can make arrangements accordingly. We need to give head counts to people, just like a wedding. Poor Fabiola organizes a wedding every single year. So it's a multi-day wedding. So it's fun though. We're looking forward to it. We've got some great speakers and we're going to be announcing some of our big name speakers soon. But I'm not able to. One's name starts with Sonia. So it's going to be very, very good, very exciting, and we're excited for you to join us. So that's June 23rd through 27th. Get the information to Fabiola as soon as you can. Any questions about Academy stuff? Okay, that's fine. The theme will be announced soon. Again, it's a themed wedding every year. So it's something. My colleagues are very creative. So keep an eye out for all these different emails. And if you have any questions or if you'd like feedback or you want to be connected, just let me know. I will be happy to connect people. I've got contacts, almost all of these testing companies as well. So if you want samples beyond what is available on their websites, I'm sure they'd be happy to provide something. But just ask and I'll be happy to help provide that to you. So without further ado, thank you for attending. Thank you for your time. Thank you for your attention. I hope it's been useful. This will be posted on the website soon, so you can share it with your colleagues if they'd like to watch it. And we'll be in touch. Thanks, everybody. Have a good afternoon, what's left of it anyway.